Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Mr. Kimball here. Um, been doing a lot of thinking recently. There's been a couple of things that have happened in our local community that I feel like I need to address, but I want to address it in a way that is appropriate and in a way that very possibly you could take this video and you could share this with your friends and family members because I feel like there are some things that are happening that need to be addressed in a very positive way and in general, I want to talk about social norms and what we should not do with people who step outside of social norms. So let me just say this on the front end. I don't want to get into the real specifics of what's happening, but this type of a conversation could be applied to not only our local community, but could it be applied all the way into the classrooms, in family structures, whatever. So I want to have a little bit of a general conversation, but understand there is a background, there is a reason why I'm wanting to have this conversation with you real quickly. So let me just kind of get right into it. You do have a right to your opinion. Everybody does. We all have our opinions on different topics. There's nothing wrong with having different opinions. That's one of the things that makes us beautiful people, right? Humans, we have the opportunity to have all kinds of different opinions based on experiences, based on things that we go through in life. You have a right to express your opinions. We do. We live in America. We have freedom of expression. We have the First Amendment. We can absolutely express our own opinions. Once we choose to act on our thoughts, whether they are good or bad, then we are also subject to the natural consequences, good or bad, of those thoughts and actions. When I say consequences, I do mean good and bad. Consequences to me just means a natural result of a decision that you've made. So, in general, like in a classroom, there's a lot of things we cannot control. Cannot control whenever a teacher gives you an assignment, but what you can control is how well you do with that assignment. You can choose not to do it. That's a choice that you're making, but the consequence is you're going to get a grade for not doing it. Or you can do it half heartedly and you're going to get a grade based on your half hearted effort. Or you're going to put your best effort forward and you're going to get a grade associated with your best effort. So it's real simple to me that you make choices. We all make choices every day, and there are natural consequences based on those choices, good and bad. We are free to choose, but we are not exempt from the consequences of those choices because they are natural and they're going to happen. Every time you make a choice, there's going to be some kind of a result. When I think about this type of a conversation, I think of an umbrella structure. So we live within social standards, society standards, laws, expectations, whether that's in the classroom, whether that's in your family, or whether that's in your local community or state or federal government. There's a certain amount of social standards that we adhere to, and those standards are principles that are common to the community. Inside of that, as long as we are operating inside that world, then we are protected. We have a lot of freedom. We can basically do what we want, when we want, how we want, as long as we operate within those social standards. But whenever we step out of that, whenever we do something that is out of the norm, something that is unacceptable by society standards, then we are kind of operating outside of principles or doing different principles than what the norms of societies are. And for those of us that remain inside that umbrella structure, inside the social norms, then we have some choices to make with the people that are acting outside of the norms. So when people act outside of those social norms, we have two choices. One, we can bring those people back inside, or we can expand that umbrella to cover those behaviors. So if we choose to bring those people back inside, I look at it as three different ways to do that. Number one is discipline. We reprimand. That is the purpose. I think of whenever I reprimand my own children or my students, the whole purpose of that is to bring them back into the social norms, to help them understand that they're doing something outside of the norm and they need to come back into that world. So we discipline them, we correct them, we have conversations. Sometimes in the classroom, that's a referral. Sometimes at home, that's some kind of discipline. Um, Lots of different ways to incorporate that. If that doesn't work, then we understand that they are maybe being stubborn or they're just made a decision to live in that world. So at some level, we start to ostracize them or we exclude them from the norms of society. So we don't invite them to things, or we just set them aside, or we ask them to do something very different. And then in extreme cases, If what they are doing turns out to be illegal and we really have to isolate them, what I'm really thinking of is something like jail, because they've done something so extreme that we need to get them outside of society completely. So we isolate them and contain them. The other option is to expand that umbrella to cover their behaviors. So we normalize what was previously considered to be abnormal. One of the easiest ways to do that is to stay silent. And really, that's one of the main reasons why I'm creating this video, because I do not want to stay silent with some of the things that are happening currently. Silence is a version of permission, because those people that are operating outside of society norms, as they do those behaviors, if they're not getting reprimanded, if they're not being told that their behavior is inappropriate or wrong, then they're going to feel like they have permission to continue in those behaviors. And they're going to feel like that they have a right to continue in those behaviors, which ultimately they have a right to do that. But is it going to maintain the general principles of a society? Sometimes the answer is no. And we need to help bring them back onto those norms. Okay. We could also join that activity. We can participate in that activity. And then once we start to do that, then we could get into step C, which is where we turn around and we criticize the normalized behaviors of society. So we start to participate in what they're doing, and then we look back at those people that are staying normal in society behaviors, and we start to openly criticize and we critique them to make them feel like they are doing something wrong on their end. Okay. So in general, without getting into any of those specifics of what's happening, this is how I see what's going on. We have some social standards. We have principles that we operate within, and we need to bring some people back in there. So we have a decision to make. What kind of principles do we want to operate within? What kind of character traits do we want to display? And then how are we going to bring certain people back into the norms of society? Gives you something to think about. I would love to hear your feedback. For those of you that know exactly what's going on in the community, it is time for our voices to be heard. I will talk at you later.